welcome to another episode, or the first episode, I should say, of The Life of Cortez, brought to you by me, Raz. And, starting a new podcast. We bought this podcast setup today, actually, and we managed to set it up in Teresa's bedroom, and we're testing it out. And what better way than to break down the NRL 2024 Grand Final with the Melbourne Storm and the mighty Penrith Panthers this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. at Accor Stadium. Now, it was a pretty crazy finals run in the last few weeks. In the prelim final, is that what it's called? Why is it called a prelim final when there's should be quarters, semis, and grand final, right? But we have pre-final, qualifying, final. I don't really understand the business behind that. But last week's NRL finals, we saw the Melbourne Storm defeat the Roosters. Let me pull up the score. Melbourne Storm defeat the Roosters 48-18 last Friday, and that was a pretty big curb stomping. And the day after, we saw the Sharks versus Penrith at Accor Stadium as well, 26-6. Now let's quickly have a review of the Storm versus Melbourne game. Now it was quite a big battle, actually. Even though the score lines was a big blowout. Yeah, I don't know. The Roosters didn't seem like they were at their A game, and they didn't look as sharp as they were last week. That's a big credit to the Storm offense and defense. I think they're a little bit more experienced and a little bit more physical than the Roosters. But we saw a really cool contest, and we definitely saw a definitive win from the Storm. The scoreline was 48-18, and the biggest controversial point of this game was actually Nelson Afasolomona. Is that how you say his name? Nelson Afasolomona. I don't know. Well, that guy, Big Nasty, pretty much got a 5-match ban in the NRL. Originally it was 4 actually, and then he flew down from Sydney to try get it down, but unfortunately he was unlucky. Now, as a Penrith fan, that's great. That's optimal. Having Big Nasty off the bench, he was pretty devastating the last time we faced each other. But having Big Nasty suspended is actually a good thing for our forward pack, and it's just mainly going to be the battle of if Melbourne's forward pack can step up without Big Nasty. But we'll save that for later in the show. But yeah, there was a controversial sin bin where Nelson pretty much ran into Lindsay Collins, and Lindsay Collins pretty much knocked himself out, and it was pretty rough. He played the ball backwards, and he didn't pass his HIA, and as a result, like we said, he received a 4-match ban. And a lot of fans are very confused about this, and they don't know if they feel like it's correct or anything. But yeah, a lot of people are very pissed off about that one. Now, as a rugby league fan, I personally hate to see Big Nasty be suspended for 4 games, and 4 games is quite a lengthy period for you to serve. And if there was some sort of way that you can negotiate, or some sort of rule that you can negotiate for you to do it after the grand final, because the NRL season is pretty long, 27 games, and for you to, in the most important game, be banned is pretty important. And I know a few greats like Cameron Smith have also been banned in their grand final, but yeah, it's just a really shit go for Big Nasty. And now, we'll see how they go. And the Roosters didn't really live up to the challenge. They kind of looked flat, and James Tedesco had a very quiet game to his standard, and, he was very close to winning the Dally M's this year. He only lost by 1 point to Jerome Hughes, but he's had a really star-studded season so far with just not being able to play Origin, or he did play 1 game, but only playing 1 game of Origin rather than 3 games of Origin, and not having to captain the team. I think that just allowed his season to thrive and him to be better. But yeah, very quiet game coming from him. Now moving on to the Sharks versus Penrith. I personally went to this game and I was very concerned as a Penrith fan. The main thing I was really concerned for was that the weather. You know, the weather, as a Penrith fan, notoriously our team sucks in wet weather. The Cats are afraid of the wet. But, you know, we still managed to come out on top. It was a very grindy game and I don't think we showed our full potential. I think most likely like the Roosters really showed our attacking prowess and the magical like touch of Nathan Cleary, the greatest man to ever touch a football, in my opinion. But yeah, I think because Penrith's offense and defense is so based on precision and gang tackling, having it being more wet kind of just interfered with just our offense, and it kind of looked clunky at times. But there was still some really strong shining lights for our team. It was mainly going to be around our defense, which I think proved very strong, holding the Sharks just to 6 points. And yeah, Nico Hines took the 2-point field goal, and then he missed a very important one when I think Katoa or one of the wingers, was Mulatalo, who scored that try. But yeah, a very big missed opportunity for them. And it was actually a very close game. The scoreline doesn't really indicate how close of a scoreline it was. I think it was mainly 10-6 for a good 20 to 30 minutes of the game. The Sharks forward pack really stepped up to our forward pack, but unfortunately they couldn't get across through their own half, and Nathan Cleary and Jerome Luai definitely kicked them into their own corners, and our defense prevailed. Now, a lot of our question marks around Isaac Tungo and Sony Turuva, their defense really got tested. And in my opinion, they look good. Probably the best they've looked all year, to be honest. And this is very impressive to see, considering we're having such big defensive lapses. And I think I saw a scoreline saying it was 45% scored on Tungo's side. So a lot of our tries are coming from, I think he plays right wing. So for us to clean up on that this week, or last week I should say, was actually a very big deal. But yeah, we still have more gears in my opinion. I think Nathan Cleary when it's not wet will be good, and we'll be rocking the pink jerseys this Sunday. Another big talking point from that game is Nathan Cleary came off with just holding his shoulder, but to be honest, I think he's fine. Like, that guy, if you told him to go play whatever, like, he'll play and he will be fine. And hopefully that when it's not wet, like, his shoulder will hold out. Like, if you look at all of the previous times he's done his injuries, it's always been when the weather was a bit more wet. So there was a few times where he popped his hamstring, and that was all during wet home away games, I believe. And then there was one game from the Bulldogs where it was also a wet game. And I don't think that's very conductive or very productive for his hamstring injury. But now that Nathan Cleary, it's looking like the weather this Sunday is going to be hot. I don't have many concerns, but Brad Schneider still is on the bench, but we'll talk about that later on. So like we mentioned, it's actually going to be a very tight contest. The dollar odds, I believe, are going to be $1.92 to $1.92, or maybe it's slightly different now with the Storms being the slight favourites, which is fair enough given that we've lost a lot of talent over the last few years, with the likes of Stephen Crichton and one of our bench generals, Spencer Leniu, along with a long list of other players as well. And like, even though despite that, we still came out second this year, with the majority of us missing key players like Scott Sorensen, Nathan Cleary, James Fisher-Harris at times, Paul Adamoti even, and our bench depth and our reserve grade definitely got tested in that regard. But the Penrith Panthers, by some miracle, is actually crazy that we managed to get our full strength team. And we're going to be breaking down the team list, and we're going to do a little bit of a comparison of each one. So we're going to bring out the team list. So at the number 1, we have Ryan Pappenhausen. For the Penrith Panthers, we have Dylan Edwards. Number 2, we have Will Warbrick and Sony Turuva. Number 3, Jack Howarth and Isaac Tungo. Number 4, Nick Meaney and Paul Adamondi. Number 5, Xavier Coates and Brian To'o. In our halves pairing, this is going to be a really tight and contested one. Cameron Munster and Jerome Luai, Jerome Hughes and Nathan Cleary as your halfback. Now, the forward pack is going to be pretty interesting, this one, without Big Nelson or the big enforcer. We have, at number 8, Tui Kamikamica. Kamikamica. Bro, these names are hard, eh? Moses Leota, Big Moss, Harry Grant at hooker versus Mitch Kenny. Number 10 is Josh King versus James Fisher-Harris. At back row, we have Sean Bloor versus Luke Garner. Number 12 is Elisa Katoa and Liam Martin. And number 13, we have Trent Liero and Isaiah Yeo. Now, for the bench press. Now, for the bench. At the interchange, we have Tyrone Wishart, who has been pretty pivotal for the year, for the Melbourne Storm this year. Brad Schneider to cover for the halves. Christian Walsh and versus Lindsay Smith. At number 16, we have Lazarus Valoepu. Liam Henry. 17 is Alec McDonald and Matthew Eisenhuth. Now, there's a lot to unpack and uncover in this one, to be honest. Now, first, let's talk about the fullbacks. Ryan Papenhuyzen has looked like he's in peak form. He may have lost a little bit of pace of speed over the last few years, to be honest. But it looks like he's really evolved with other aspects of his game. Just like his ball playing looks really, really sharp this year. And Dylan Edwards had a really hot start to the season without Nathan Cleary being by his side in the halves. Dylan Edwards has had to take a very strong and very important part to this team. But like we mentioned every single week, or you may have heard every single week, Dylan Edwards is a freaking meter eater. And even though he had a really slow/rough patch into the back end of the season, it looks like he is shifting into gear where it matters most. And I feel like Dylan Edwards will be very pivotal in making sure that he organizes the line properly against this star-studded attacking force of the Melbourne Storm. Next up, we have Will Warbrick versus Sania Taruva. Oh, let me check who I'm going to back for that one. At fullback, I don't know. It's going to be pretty hard, but I will say Ryan Papenhuyzen has been pretty lethal, especially with his ball playing. There's 3 combinations of their spine of Ryan Papenhuyzen, Cam Munster and Jerome Hughes has been very interesting to see so far. We'll see. Now for the wingers, the battle of the wingers. Now, how Melbourne beat us in the last few games was they really had a big aerial assault and they had a big focus on attacking our smaller wingers. Now, I think Ivan Cleary must have seen this and he must have seen that this was a very big glaring weakness within our teams. And to be honest, the last 3 teams that we faced also have a very similar attacking style, where their wingers are very powerful, very explosive, and very tall. And that's the likes of the Sharks and the Sydney Roosters, with Daniel Tupou and Dominic Young, and I think Mulatalo, and I don't know who the other winger was. My bad. But those guys, their halfbacks love kicking to them, and I think we've, for the most part, defended really well. I'm more so not concerned about the wing defense, even though it does look like an obvious target. I think that we've cleaned it up really well. It's more so just when we start sliding and our centers have to start going into that one-on-one tackle is where I see the biggest weakness within our teams. Another thing is, like, if we are caught on those sliding defense, it can really impact some tries scored in the middle as well, because we saw from last time during, I think, round 26 versus the Storm, we saw Tyron Wishart just do the easiest dummy of his life and everyone fell for it. It's mainly just defensive discipline with that one. Will Warbrick versus Sania Taruva. I'm going to have to pick Will Warbrick. He looks like he's on a tear right now. And at number 3, we have Jack Howarth versus Isaac Tungo. Jack Howarth looks like he's really running really aggressively right now. And I have a feeling a lot of the offense will actually end up going to him. And as I mentioned to you before, they have our team doesn't do well when it's sliding too much because our line speed is so fast. Once we start shifting and the ball starts moving laterally, I think there are some defensive lapses that could cause a potential one-on-one with the centers. At number 4, we have Nick Meaney versus Paul Adamotti. I think Paul Adamotti being out with a fractured arm actually really impacted our performance towards the third quarter of the season. And having him back has actually been very pivotal. And given that he wasn't really wanted at the Bulldogs, he's had a really big year, Paul Adamotti. But I do believe that if there was someone to target, it would be Nick Meaney. I believe he does. There are some reports of him having some potential injuries leading into the grand final, along with a few other members of the Melbourne Spine. Next up, we have Xavier Coates versus Brian To'o. I'm going to have to give the edge out to Brian To'o here. Meter eater, consistent, probably the best player in the finals so far. We just taking those tough carries, and watching him in person is actually so freaking crazy because he just freaking carries the ball. And he's just so hard to tackle. And even though it doesn't look like he does much, like every single tackle break, he just gains an extra 5 to 7 meters from just walking him down. Quick play the ball, and then, play 3, play 4 goes to our forwards. Now, here's going to be the most controversial part, is going to be within our 5/8 and halfback matchup. In my opinion, it's going to be pretty 50-50, and it's going to be just the basis of who's going to show up better on the day or whoever looks more on. Cameron Munster is pretty devious, especially around the ruck, and if he gets early ball, we don't know what Cameron Munster might do. He could either kick early, he could just run it straight, he could take it himself, but he does look very dangerous running the ball by himself, and so do a lot of the members of the Melbourne Storm. Jerome Luai, however, he's been pretty pivotal with his kicks. Not so much his long kicking game. It's going to be his short kicking game, which has been pretty important for us. We gather quite a few set restarts, and he just puts it in behind the line pretty effectively if he sees the fullback out of line. And he's also just a very positive assistance to Nathan Cleary. He's always right behind him, and then if he doesn't look like he likes what he likes to the left, he will just skip to the right and just skip across the line, skip across the line until someone is willing to take a tackle, or he sees an opening in the defense, whether it be the wingers pushing up and moving and not being very disciplined. That's how I see a potential avenue for scoring as well. And Jerome Hughes versus Nathan Cleary, our Dally M winner versus the halfback GOAT, in my opinion, Nathan Cleary. Nathan Cleary just seems like he just steps up to every single big moment, and it's actually really crazy. And Jerome Hughes has been on form all year. He's been carrying his team despite Cameron Munster being out for the majority of the season. And both look like they're clicking at the same time. Now, how I believe this game will be won is going to be through extreme discipline and the battle of field position. I believe that Penrith is okay with not scoring too many points in this one. Meanwhile, Melbourne will be looking on to put on the pressure every single time they get it. But they also have the discipline to stick with the grind as well. Now, looking at the forward pack, Tui Kamikamica, Harry Grant, Josh King, having Big Nels out, as I mentioned, is a pretty big loss. And Moses Leota, Mitch Kenny, James Fisher-Harris is also very, pretty balanced forward pack, or even a stronger forward pack, especially during the forwards. We do have the slight edge of Harry Grant being the hooker and Mitch Kenny over Mitch Kenny, but I don't think the difference between them is that big. Mitch Kenny had a pretty bad game for the Melbourne Storm against the Sharks last weekend. And I don't think he'll have one of those games back to back to back, in my opinion. Now, Harry Grant, if we can keep our line speed very fast and we make sure that we pressure him off the ball, his running game should hopefully be eliminated. But the most dangerous thing is if Ryan Pappenhausen or Cameron Munster sweep right behind him and, they start spraying the ball really fast, which I do see as a possibility that could happen. But I think what happened last time in our last encounter with the Melbourne Storm was that we did have very inexperienced back rowers, like Mav Geyer was on there. We have Casey McLean defending the edges. And I don't think that was like that was probably their first times ever playing this Melbourne Storm team, which has been pretty like star-studded for a long time. So now that we have a bit more maturity and obviously we have a lot more practice defending it, I think we should be good. But yeah, if you can eliminate Harry Grant's running game, that would be very important. Tui Kamitha versus Moses Leota, I think that'll be a very balanced matchup. I think Moses has probably been the best forward for Penrith this year compared to James Fisher-Harris. I personally think that Fish hasn't been running the line as hard, in my opinion. Like last year versus the Warriors, during that qualifying final, Fisher-Harris was definitely the best forward in the game, and he was running like crazy. But I think Moses Leota is just has pretty much taken on every single forward pack this year and just ran it straight. And more aggressively, and I think having those two off during that 40 minutes that they're off, around that 20-minute to 60-minute mark, will be very important for Melbourne to capitalize on. Now, with the back rows, they're going to be pretty important in making sure that they link well with the halfback, especially having Liam Martin like protecting Nathan Cleary and making sure that he doesn't do too many hard or reaching tackles. Liam Martin's going to have to do a very big defensive job to make sure that Nathan Cleary doesn't get spotted up. And as we mentioned before, Isaiah Yeo versus Trent Leo. Isaiah Yeo is the best lock in the game, and it's actually crazy. Now, with the bench, there is some sort of question for me where is Scott Sorensen have a potential to play? I think he does, and hopefully his hamstring as well. But I didn't see him training directly at the Penrith Panthers open training day, which was a very interesting point. Maybe he doesn't look like he's fully fit or fully available to do full team training. But who knows? Every single game this year, pretty much Ivan Cleary has changed the lineup like just right before. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. And for Melbourne's interchange bench, we have Lazarus Valopoepu. He's been doing pretty well. He is very inexperienced, however, and we'll see what the Penrith forward pack can do to rival them. And the other boys, Lindsay Smith, Liam Henry, and Matt Eisenhuth, those boys have been very keys. Even though we lost Spencer Leniu this year, like they just managed to show up and do a job every single game, day in, day out. They probably don't get as much credit as they deserve because of the star-studded props of our team. But yeah, it'll be a very even and balanced matchup. And yeah, I think it'll be very much one in the forwards. Isaiah Yeo is going to be very important. James Fisher-Harris, Moses Leota is also going to be very important. And Mitch Kenny in determining that line speed and making sure that the ball doesn't shift out to our edges where we are weak is going to be very important. How I see Penrith scoring against the Melbourne Storm is probably going to be through Nick Meaney. And yeah, it's just just playing off the brilliance of Nathan Cleary. His long kicking game will be very important in making sure that we pin them, because without having Nels there, their go forward isn't as great in my opinion. And even earlier in the year when we versed the Storm and Nathan had to come out in the last 10 minutes, I still think we would have won that game. And that wasn't with our full strength squad. So that's just an insight on my tips. All right. Now let's talk about the storylines going into this. Here we have Penrith Panthers going for a 4-peat. They've made 5 of the last 5 grand finals, losing to Melbourne Storm with Cam Smith in 2020. Meanwhile, the Melbourne Storm are playing in their first grand final without the big 3, and that's Cam Smith, Billy Slater, and Cooper Cronk. That 2021 was the last one, and then was the last one that they was the last one that they won. And they've had to revamp their roster, which is a big raps to Craig Bellamy for completely stripping down the roster, building some players back up, and making them into very top tier first grade talent. And some of these players like Sean Bloor, Katoa, and some other players, they weren't even wanted by their old clubs, but somehow Craig Bellamy made them into like premier or even like top leading players in their position. So that's what makes it very highly contested. And Melbourne has been the top team all year, and they've been the team to beat. But obviously we have something to say about that. All right, now if you think about the greatest teams of all time, whether it be like the 1990s Chicago Bulls where Michael Jordan went 2-3-peats, the Golden State Warriors, the Kobe Bryant and Shaq, like those dynasties have been very huge, and I don't think there's been one in recent memory of sports that's been like this. And it's been quite an honor to witness history being made, with Penrith potentially taking 4 in a row. Crazy scenes. That's just a true testament to Nathan Cleary, who's only at 26 years of age, has already made 5 grand finals. And if you think about it, some players who are great won't even make that many grand finals, and we've managed to do it consistently. And the Melbourne Storm, despite them losing Cameron Smith, they've had to reconstruct their roster, and they're back to peak form. It'll also be a battle of who is a better coach, whether it be Craig Bellamy and Ivan Cleary. Having one of these games, or winning one of these games, or winning this particular series, in the matter of fact, will be very important to legacy. All right, now let's bring in a caller. Let's bring in Lordstone. Let's see how he goes. We're going to bring him in. Let's talk about tips. Yo, Josh.
Hello, Raz.
How are you, bro?
Good, brother. How are you doing?
I'm good. Have you finished training?
Yes, finished training. Just outside.
Gangster, thank you for accepting the call. Now, a very big battle going into this weekend. And
yes,
you are a very good man with your tips, and you always get them right. How do you see this game playing out?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes we go good. Sometimes, a bit mid. But this one, I think it's what pretty much everyone anticipated. I think we could have skipped all of the finals games because we knew it would come down to this one.
For sure.
Yeah, look, I see, Penrith and Melbourne both have a few injuries and niggles here and there, but I think pretty much everyone's playing, so that leaves it kind of anyone's game. I'm siding with Penrith here. I think no bias towards you or anything, but, we've got Romy heading to the Tigers next season. And I think he's going to finish his time with Penrith off strong. So my predictions is Jerome Luai anytime try scorer. And Will Warbrick anytime as well. And I'm thinking Penrith win with Clive Churchill going to Jerome Luai.
Jerome Luai, first Clive Churchill to finish off his time with Penrith. How do you see the scoreline going? Scoreline,
I think there will be points. I'm looking at about maybe 26-22 Penrith win.
So, yeah, that's a very close game. Penrith on to 12.
Yes, I can see it being a close one. But yeah, it's going to be a good game nonetheless. I think it will just come down to whoever's kicking game is on. And honestly, how Cleary can hold up. I think that's a big deal breaker in the game.
Yeah, you have Brad Schnitzel on the bench. So who knows how he'll go.
Exactly. So having Schneider on the bench is pretty good. But, yeah, I think Penrith can run away with it and get the 4-peat because obviously next season's going to be a bit tougher than it has been the last year. They're losing quite a few key signings. So
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully we can rebuild again, and we're just shipping them off to Tiger Town. So enjoy enjoy our players next year.
Yes, hopefully we can get off the bottom of the ladder with that. So
yeah, you just got to make the top 16, bro. Come on.
Yes, exactly. Get rid of that 17th position, and we've had a good season.
Yeah, fucking oath. All right, thank you, Josh, for your tips. Those are Josh's hot tips. Yeah,
all good, Rose.
Stay tuned for more. Thank you.
Have a good night, brother.
You too, bro.
Stay cuz.
Wow, that's so cool. We can bring them on a podcast like that. But yeah, more insight from Lordstone. If you can follow him, Lordstone on Instagram. All right, so let's talk about my tips leading into this finals match. I think if the Storm win, I think Jerome Hughes is going to be the pivotal point of that. So he's my Clive Churchill winner. And if Penrith win, Penrith will win. Nathan Cleary is going to be my Clive Churchill medalist. My anytime try scorers is going to be, I like how Nathan Cleary is attacking the line. He was like so close last week, and I'm pretty pissed off that he didn't take it himself. But I think Nathan Cleary will score a try, and Katoa, just like last time where they did like aerial assault and violated us, will also score a try. And that's paying $17 on Dabble. So yeah, gamble responsibly. I think that's what you say when you start doing one of these things. What are you really betting with? Gamble responsibly. Whatever that means. Yeah, set a deposit limit and stuff like that, eh? But yeah, the odds are very, very tight right now. So yeah, into the next one. Okay, thank you again for listening to another episode of The Life of Cortez. We're going to be dropping more episodes in the upcoming weeks. And it's going to be a little bit about powerlifting. It's going to be about the people in my life and their stories. And we'll try to get some cool people on here too. So stay tuned for next week.
The crowd becomes a blur now. The noise a muted roar. Penrith's broken through the line. There's another chance to score. Go the mighty Panthers. Let's put them to the test. Go the mighty mountain men. We're here to beat the best. Yeah, go the mighty Panthers. There's a chance here to be great.
The mighty Panthers on the way.